From calling out all the critics who doubted Saudi League players to saying that no one has seen the best of them just yet, Cameron Smith speaks out on a ridiculous notion about LIV Golf, and you can't argue with anything he's saying. Now, ever since the introduction of the Breakaway League, there's been this idea that only washed-up players are signing for them, and that anyone who's actually serious about their golfing career would never go to this new circuit. As a matter of fact, some people have gone as far as to say that these players have effectively ruined their careers, and that no one's ever going to take them seriously because they're never going to win anything big like a major again. But after the first two major championships of 2023, Cameron Smith is all charged up. He's sick and tired of all this criticism, and so he's finally called out everyone who's been doubting the league. Yep, the young Aussie star is here to tell everyone that no, LIV golf players are not washed up. But wait, that's what everyone else from the league has been saying too. So what's different about Smith saying it? Well, you see, this guy comes with actual evidence to back his statement. 'Cause guess what? 2023 is the year of LIV Golf. Seriously, their players are absolutely killing it right now. Even those who generally didn't perform that well on the PGA Tour anymore, and were considered to be at the tail end of their careers, are now stepping up their performances big time. The proof is in the pudding, folks. Just look at how amazing they were at the Masters and the PGA Championship. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't be wrong to say that some of the performances from the likes of Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau stunned everyone. I mean, Koepka did come second at Augusta National and won the whole thing at Oak Hill. Smith, though, isn't even slightly surprised by any of it. Instead, he says that it's bizarre that people were expecting LIV players to underperform, and it's almost as if they thought that these people forgot to play golf after joining a new league. Like, that's just a ridiculous idea because you can't just forget a sport after dedicating your entire life to it. Besides, it's just a bit disrespectful. To really get an idea of the impact of this upstart league, you've got to look at everything that the PGA Tour is doing right now. Why? Well, because this new league that's supposed to be full of washed-up, good-for-nothing players has made the biggest tour in the world afraid. In fact, LIV's bigger prize purses and no-cut approach have forced the PGA Tour to rethink its strategy and introduce some of its own elevated events. Oh, and guess what? These new events basically imitate the Saudi League because they too have zero cuts and a lot of prize money. Not to mention, the PGA Tour's also changed its schedule and moved to a yearly format. The point that Cameron Smith was making is that if the Breakaway League was as bad as people thought it was, and its players were bad at the game, then the PGA Tour wouldn't have made these changes. But, of course, you can virtually see the fear within the tour as they're scrambling to not let LIV get ahead of them. After all, they do say that imitation's the greatest form of flattery. Oh, and let's not forget that the PGA is also actively trying to bring the league down, whether that's with things like the world ranking points, player suspensions, lawsuits, or even their own players always throwing shade at the Saudi League. The rivalry is very intense. Despite the PGA Tour's best efforts to undermine the upstart circuit, though, it still proved to be incredibly successful. I mean, heading into Season 2, most people thought LIV Golf was done for. The PGA Tour had just introduced all of its big changes, and Lee seemed like it was in a dire situation with a lack of sponsors and no TV rights deal. But like a phoenix, they've risen from the ashes and proved everyone wrong. The best example of this was obviously the LIV event in Adelaide, Australia. Not only was it one of the biggest golfing parties we've ever seen, even bigger than the Waste Management Phoenix Open, but it was also just an incredible event. All the tickets were sold out, and thousands upon thousands of people attended the event. Of course, the main attraction was the home hero, Cameron Smith, but everyone else was loved and welcomed by the crowd just the same. Oh, and how could I forget the watering hole? When Chase Koepka aced his shot in that area, the crowd went absolutely wild and there was booze flying everywhere. It was one of the most memorable golfing events ever. And to think it came out of LIV Golf, a league that didn't even exist a couple of years prior, is just insane. That's the thing though, they've managed to make such massive progress in a short amount of time. And honestly, people are starting to prefer it over the PGA Tour now. For starters, the shorter format is much easier to watch, especially for a younger audience that likes fast-paced sports. Not to mention, the league is also super accessible. Like, you could stream their events on YouTube, which is insane considering how much people pay to watch PGA Tour tournaments. But most importantly, it seems like LIV's relaxed schedule allows golfers to not get burned out. and they can actually put together some impressive performances during events that matter the most, the major championships. Again, Koepka is the perfect example of that. That said, even the likes of Phil Mickelson and Cam Smith have performed admirably, all because they get plenty of time to recharge themselves between LIV events and prepare for the majors. The PGA Tour stars like Rory McIlroy, on the other hand, have said that their schedule's getting a bit too hectic, which is impacting their performances at the majors. I mean, people laughed at LIV members when they said they liked a more relaxed schedule. In fact, a lot of critics went as far as to say that playing only a few three-day events is going to ruin their game. And yet, the opposite has happened. That being said, these guys aren't humble by any stretch of the imagination. So just like Smith called the haters out after his colleagues' great performances, other LIV players chimed in as well. DeChambeau, for instance, says that Saudi League players' performances during the majors have validated everything they've said from the start. He believes that they're all competing on the highest level and have the ability to win many more major championships. On top of that, he also hopes that people can start to see the light now, because the truth is that LIV really is trying to bring something new and fresh to the sport. Likewise, Charles Howell III also rejected the idea that playing 54 holes somehow makes you less competitive. Instead, he says that the league's players are actually still working as hard as they did during their PGA Tour days. What's more, he also thinks that there's nothing sacred about having 72 holes in an event. In fact, it's quite the opposite, because having to compete within fewer holes can actually mount more pressure on you, which is maybe why breakaway league players compete so well on the big stage. And yeah, Koepka also backed his colleagues up, saying that he was the first guy to win 2 LIV events. I mean, it's no coincidence that he's also managed to nab a major championship on top of that. That said, there are obviously people still out there who think his win was a fluke, and that normal service will resume after this purple patch. Cameron Smith isn't having any of that, though, because he thinks we haven't even seen the best of LIV golf yet. Now, the Australian says that he rejected the idea of Saudi League players being bad months ago. After all, he sees just how good they are every week when he practices with his teammates or competes against the other teams during LIV events. He knows these guys are perfectly capable of taking on the best of the best on the PGA Tour, and obviously, so many of them have major winning experience on their hands. Here's the real kicker, though. Smith says that these golfers are actually working harder than ever before, and there's still a ton of untapped potential there. So it wouldn't be surprising if they go on and win other major championships in the near future too, which, let's be fair, would be a massive boost for the league. As for Smith, well, he's trying to keep himself fresh after 2 stellar major performances. And now, the next thing for him is to try and defend his Open Championship title in July 2023. So there you have it. From saying that no one has seen the best of LIV players just yet, to calling out all the critics who doubted them, this is what Cameron Smith had to say about LIV golf.